Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Marco Landry and today I will be documenting the process of installing a master link, a rivet master link on my 415 chain. So if you watch my previous videos, you will know that I was not properly equipped to do this work the last time. So after some research and some shopping, I found the proper tool to do the work. So I'm going to talk about my findings for the 415 chain tool. And once I'm done with this, we'll come back to the bike and I will talk about the process of riveting that master link on that 415 chain. So stay right there. I'll move the workbench and we'll start in a few seconds. All right, so before we get started and before I start talking about tools, I want to mention a few things about the rivet options. So in my case, as I mentioned earlier, I'm using the D.I.D 415 ERZ chain. And in order to connect that chain together, you need a master link. The options for master links are the clip-on type, where you can see here that those pins are solid, so you can't rivet them. They are held in place by a plate and a clip that goes on top of that plate. So this is not very solid in my opinion, because if there's any flex in the chain, that clip can pop out and then your link can fall as well. So not a big fan. I would much rather have the rivet type, where you can see here the pins are hollow and you put the external plate on top of these two pins. The pin would come across and then you rivet that pin so that it's going to flare out and hold that plate in place. So to me, that's a much better option, and that's why I was very keen on getting a tool to help me install this properly. If you have a bigger bike, so if you have a 600cc bike or higher, you most likely have one of these Motion Pro PBR tools. So the P and the B and the R means press, break, and rivet. You can press some plates in place, you can break the chain, and you can rivet the chain. This specific tool from PBR here is designed for the 50 series chain. So when I say a 50 series chain, it means that it will support the chains that are starting with the number 5 basically. So you have the 520, you have the 525, and you have the 530 chain. This tool will allow you to do the 3 operations I mentioned earlier, so the press, the break, and the rivet. This tool will support this. I've been using this for a decade. It's bulletproof, it works like a charm. However, the challenge that you have with this is that the diameter of that breaking pin here is too big for the hole or the diameter of the 415 pin. Hence why I had to do some research and some shopping and found this tool here that allows me to press, break, and rivet a 415 chain or a series 40 chain. Basically, what ends up happening when you're pressing the side plates or the side plate onto the master link portion here, you would end up taking your master link and you align the 2 pins into the 2 holes of that press plate. And then you take your other side plate, put it on top after you've connected the 2 female ends on these pins, and you will press everything with that other press plate that will fit on top of your side plate, but will not interfere with the 2 pins. So it allows you to compress everything and sandwich everything together properly without having any restriction from the pins. And if you were to try to do this with a pair of pliers, obviously you could bend the middle of the plate, which is not a good thing, because then you could have a kink in your chain and it wouldn't be a smooth roll around your sprocket. So that's why these press plates are very critical. And the way it's working, basically is that you take your chain tool and you align the two plates on both sides here, so like this. And when you turn your alignment bolt, the plates are getting closer and closer. It allows you to sandwich that side plate on top of that master link. So that's the first operation. The second operation will be to break, and the breaking part is easy. I've talked about this earlier. You have here your 3 different pin size to break the chain. So depending on the diameter of the pin or the hole on the side plate, you figure out what works well, which pin works better. In my case, I'll take the largest diameter of the 3 pins, and you can see here it fits properly into this side plate, so I know that it will be good enough to push the plate. So what you want to do is you want to take the little spring and slide the spring on top of that breaking pin. Put the breaking pin and the spring into the alignment bolt, and then you take your push bolt and you just screw it into your alignment bolt, and you will eventually see the breaking pin coming out. Now it's just a matter of taking either the lever or a wrench, and you simply push this so that the pin is ejected from the roller and the plate. That's going to be your second operation. And the last operation that you will do with this tool is to rivet your pin. To rivet the pin, the tool comes with a riveting pin. And you can see here that the riveting pin has a little ball on top. So this little ball on top, you can see the cylinder here, the full cylinder, and that little ball at the end will allow you to flare out your hollow pin. The riveting tip will go into this hollow part. When you apply some pressure with the chain tool, this little ball will go into this hole, and it will flare out that hole, and it will create a mushroom at the end so that your plate won't back off and will stay or will remain properly secure against the inner plate of your chain. When you're using this, what's really important to understand is that this ball is only retracted a little bit. So it means that you can't push this any further than that cylinder shaped tube here, because at some point the pin from your chain will hit the cylinder shape of this riveting tip, and it won't go any further. So the amount of space or play that you have is tiny, right? So you can see here that it's a tiny little amount of space. You'll have only 1 millimeter of play to push this into that hollow pin. I'm explaining this to you because I've seen a lot of people quite often just trying to go and tight this very, very tight. As soon as you get to the edge of that cylinder shape here, it won't go any further. So you're not expanding or flaring out this rivet anymore. I would say that normally it's at most like a full turn with your chain tool and you'll reach the limit. So normally what I do is like a quarter turn, I remove the tool, measure the flare of that pin, and if it's not meeting the specs, I put it back on, do another quarter turn. So I go in small increment until I get to the appropriate measurement that will guarantee that I have enough of a flare to retain the pin in place. When you're riveting the pins, you need to use this little Anvil adapter here. So this Anvil adapter, you can see has a recessed portion into it. And the recessed portion is really critical because you want the protruding part of your pin to touch the back of this anvil here. But you don't want the chain plate to touch the outside of the anvil plate, because you will apply the pressure on the pin and not on the plate. When you put this together here, you can see there's a tiny little gap between the plate and the anvil itself. And this is the way it should be. You don't want that anvil to touch the chain plate. You only want the pin to touch the back of the anvil plate, because that's where the pressure will be. Otherwise, the pressure would be on your side plate, and you are risking bending it or adding extra pressure that is not required. So you would just put this into your chain tool, like so, and then you would have your riveting pin that will go in. I didn't put the spring, but you understand the concept here. So the riveting tip will be in, and when I screw this in here, you will see now that I have my pin protruding out, and you would put this piece here, and then on the other side you would have your plate, and in between this link and this plate you would have the two female part of the chain that would be connected there. You would just simply align this to make sure that your pin will go through this hole, and you then rivet everything in place. It's going to make a bit more sense once we get on the bike, but that's the process to use the chain tool for these three operations. The last thing that I want to discuss before we go to the bike is that when you do this type of work, you probably want to have a micrometer handy as well. You want to be able to measure the distance between the plates so that when you press the plates in place, you don't want to overdo it. So you'll be able to measure the distance from outside plate to outside plate, so that when you press the master link plates together, you stay as close as possible to the dimensions that you've identified with your micrometer. So that's the first thing that you want to measure. The second thing that you want to measure is before you start riveting or flaring out this pin, you want to measure the diameter of that pin. So in this case here, when I do this, oops, I got a dimension of 0.1555 inches. So this is the diameter of that pin. If you go on the D.I.D. website, you will see that for my chain, the 415 ERZ, the chain rivet flare dimensions are 0.165 to 0.173 of an inch. So in millimeter, that's going to be fairly small. It's 4.191 to 4.3742, right? So it's a very, very small spread of that metal, or flaring out of this metal. Don't forget that the measurement for the diameter of the pin that I just showed you for that master link, this pin here, the diameter of it is 0.1555 of an inch. And when you rivet it in place, you want a minimum of 0.163 to a maximum of can't do this backwards. You want a minimum of 0.165 to a maximum of 0.173. I'm telling you this because you don't need to go super crazy and go like really, really tight. You'll do this in small increment and just add a bit of pressure, remove it, measure, and then you do it until you get within those two measurements. So in terms of tools, you have a few different options, and I've looked at three different options in my case. So the first option was obviously the Motion Pro, because I'm such a big fan of their products. I figure I would simply just go on the Motion Pro site and order whatever I needed. But it turns out that the kit that would work with the chain doesn't have the ability to press the plates for the 40 series chain. So it's only, this kit will only press the plate for the 40 series chain. So you need an extra adapter in order to make this work. So it was also $92. It was out of stock, so I figured I would keep shopping a bit more and look at different options. So then I stopped on the RK Chain website and I look at their option, and this riveting tool or chain tool was quite interesting as well. It looked really well made, really well designed. It was $97, so still a bit on the expensive side, but if it's proper quality, I don't mind paying a bit more. And it does the job for the 40 and the 50 type chain, at least for the breaking part, but it will not allow you to rivet the 420 and the 428 type chain. So I wasn't sure if 415 would be as part of this offering as well. I'm assuming that it is because it's the same chain pitch. So then I look at the various options available, and you have the option for the plate holder and the 40 or the 400 rivet flare pin, which added up to an extra $28 on top of the base $97, right? So when you add all of this up, it adds up to about $125 US, which is a bit steep for a chain tool. And I kept looking at various options and ended up buying this Abn Chain Breaker from Amazon for $20 US, because this unit allows me to do everything I want on my 415 chain without requiring any additional components. So everything comes in the package, and it will support the chain size from number 35 to 630. To me, that was a no-brainer. A fraction of the price, and everything was packaged into this one kit. If you're not able to find this unit in stock, I found out recently that Spears Racing is also reselling this kit. Obviously, it's a bit more expensive, but Spears offers some great service and some fast shipping, so that could be an option if you are in a rush to get this kit. So that's it for the process, or all the things that you need to consider before doing the work. So now we'll just go on the bike and we will actually do the riveting of that plate and that master link on the chain itself. So you can see here that I've already inserted the master link here, and I've put the plate on. And when I did this, I put a lot of grease around it so that it would hold everything in place properly. So now what I want to do next is to press everything in place so that this plate, the plate is properly seated before we start riveting. Those pins here are not protruding out, so they need to protrude out a little bit so that I can rivet it like these here. So what I want to do before as well is to measure the distance between the plates. I got 11.62. So what I'm doing here is that the plate with the two holes, I can see through the holes, so I'm making sure that the pins are visible so that when I'm pressing those plates together, I'll be able to see the pin popping out via those holes. So if you're not aligned properly, obviously you won't be able to press the plates, because the press plate from the tool will prevent the pin from coming across. So you want to make sure that this is aligned properly before you do this, and making sure that the groove on the other side is also touching the top and the bottom of the plate and not the actual pin themselves. Alright, so it looked like I've managed to press it just a little bit. So now I'm just going to take the micrometer and measure. I have about a distance of 12.29 millimeter. So I'll definitely need to squeeze this a bit more. So I'll bring this here. All right, so everything's aligned. So we're just gonna tighten it, maybe just a quarter turn. So just did a quarter turn, and we'll remove this and we'll measure it once more. So now I have 11.99 millimeter. right, so now it's starting to look a bit better. There's definitely a bit of a recessed portion. So we'll measure one more time and see what it says. The distance between my two external plates on the master link is now at 11.3. Now I think I'm good. So now I will rivet those two pins by using the riveting pin from the kit. Keep in mind that when you do this, there's a ball, and after that there's below the ball there's the edge of the cylinder. You can't push past that cylinder, so you can only go the depth of the ball basically. So after that, the side of the cylinder will be flush against your rivet and you can't go any further. So I'm telling you this because if you just go super tight, it won't make a difference. You're just going to damage your pin. So you have to be cautious of that, and you can't go too far when you're doing this. And as I said earlier, one of the best way of doing this is just you take a bit of grease and put some grease on top of it. I have the tool, I put the spring on top of the riveting pin. I'm going to insert the riveting pin into the alignment bolt, and then I'm going to use the push bolt and screw it into the alignment bolt until we have the riveting tip coming out. It doesn't need to go really far because I'm going to use my 14mm wrench to screw the alignment pin onto the chain. And I forgot to put the anvil as well. So again, we're going to put the anvil at the end. So now we're all set. So we got the anvil and I got my riveting pin and everything is nice and secure. So we're going to do this one pin at a time. So I'm going to screw this in here until we get close to the pin. And then we make sure that it's properly centered. So what I'm going to do next is take the 14mm wrench and we will just do a quarter turn and then we'll release it. And then I'll just move it over to the next pin and we'll do the same thing again, just with a quarter turn. Making sure that the anvil is properly lying, everything is nice and straight. All right, so it took me a few times, but now it looks like after probably 3/4 of a turn, I got pretty much to the end of the ball there. So the riveted part was touching the cylinder part of my riveting tip. So now it looks like I should be fairly bang on. And when I measure now, I have 4.31 and 4.35 of flare, which is perfect because I was looking for anything between 4.19 and 4.39 millimeters. So, and the next steps, I'm going to put just a dab of paint on those two rivets. So this way, visually, again, I'll be able to tell which link is the master link. So this way, I don't have to spin the wheel around, especially when it's dirty. I'll be able to quickly tell which one is the master link. So this is what it will look like here. So here you have it, guys. That's another item that's been completed on the bike. Overall, I'm quite happy with this. The chain tool works quite well. You know, it was not very expensive, and it actually does the job. I wasn't sure about the quality at first. There was a few things that were off. So the press plate with the holes, I thought the distance between the holes was a bit too narrow for the chain, but it worked okay. The anvil was a bit awkward at first to use because it kept falling down. But in order to resolve this, I simply put a lot of grease in the hole and then the anvil will stay in, so you can adjust without having the anvil that will keep falling down. I would say that the other thing that you need to be aware of, and I know I mentioned this earlier, but you will definitely have to Dremel or grind the mushroom part of the pin when you try to break that pin again or break the chain again, because the tool itself, or the breaking pins or the breaker pins, are probably not solid enough. You know, when I was trying to rivet the pin, I could feel, or I could see the pin binding a little bit. So I don't think it's going to be the same quality as my trusted PBR tool, but overall it does the job. So I would definitely encourage you guys to purchase one of these if you don't have one already and you're trying to figure out what will work well. I will have some more details on my website, so please take a look at my website. I'll have a blog entry that talks about what I've been using, like in terms of tools. I'll talk about the chain as well a bit more in details, and how to figure out the pitch for different type of chains. Hopefully that's going to be of interest and helpful to all of you guys. If you have comments or questions, please post them below, and I'll add them to the blog if need be. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.